I mean, the day-to-day of life can definitely help, or well, not help, but actually hinder us by, it causes us to lose focus on those things. And then there's a number of reasons for that. Sometimes it's because there's all these different squeaky wheels in our life, people saying, oh, you should do this or you should do that, or and it makes us react, become very reactionary, and then we just end up kind of grinding through each day, chasing down squeaky wheels. Sometimes it's our own little, personal beliefs about ourselves or life and things that can take control of us in a very hypnotic manner, and we start moving away from actually what we decided was what was most important for us, and that's just because tapes that society has kind of programmed in our brain start playing, and then again leading. I mean, you can be all excited about your internet business and I want this lifestyle and things, but it can be tough when all of a sudden, I don't know, your mom or somebody in your family is like, so, how's that job coming? Are you, saving up for retirement? And, all the traditional things that people say. And I don't know, I'm probably being kind of esoteric with some of this, but that's why we have to concertedly come back and look at, okay, well, what is that thing that we're trying to work for? What is that thing that we're trying to achieve? What are the things that I decide that fulfill me most? And you might all of a sudden read one of those and go, yeah, you know what, I hadn't thought about that for a good few months now because, for whatever reason that might be. So, regularly reminding yourself and thinking through that, I find incredibly invaluable, and it's a continuous thing. It's definitely not something that you just do once. So going right along with the definite major purposes, number 2, which is the lifestyle design, which we already kind of started, touching upon there.
Well, actually, I do actually have one more real quick thing I want to say about the definite major purpose. And I want to give an example just so people kind of know, if you haven't heard the term or you're more of a first-time listener, because we talk about the definite major purpose from time to time, I wanted to give you kind of an example of how I'm able to make certain decisions. So, for instance, I've actually got several different things that make up my definite major purpose, and one of them is freedom. Freedom's incredibly important to me, and I mean, I take it to the extreme degrees, to which I won't specifically get into here, but I just wanted to give you an example of a couple of the ideas that are in freedom in my definite major purpose. And that's like the freedom to create the exact lifestyle I choose, which we'll get into with the lifestyle design thing here in a minute. That means, for me, financial freedom makes that possible. Freedom to live anywhere that I want to choose with my family, freedom of making my own schedule, freedom to be and think what I truly want. So there's a couple of aspects of my definite major purpose. So how do I use that in my regular life? Okay, so if freedom is very specifically something that I choose as my purpose, then if somebody comes up with a different business proposal that will make it so that I actually don't have freedom, well, then I can make a very simple decision there. And this last year in 2009, we made a bunch of decisions based on our definite major purpose. And thank goodness we did, especially as we saw how those business plans worked out. It was good that we made the decisions we did, and we kept really true to what our purpose is. And that's one of the ways that it really helps. I mean, even just recently, we get offers from time to time for different business ideas, and we look at it and we compare it to what our fulfillment is and what our definite major purpose is. And it usually makes it incredibly clear what the answer should be. And that's just one of the incredibly important things that a definite major purpose can do for you. So, okay, now we can go to lifestyle design.
Yeah, so which goes right hand in hand with what you're saying. I mean, knowing, and that was one of the big things that I was contending with over the last week, as I kind of implied earlier in the episode, is that as I projected myself forward, the things that seemed like an awesome idea for now, and even in the next year, could have been really, really cool. And, they just seemed like opportunities not to pass up. And, how could I let certain things go if I'd been working for them for a long time? And it's probably sounding like I'm being very vague, but that's because I'm trying to avoid getting into details that will unfold over the next couple months as new things come into internet business mastery. But it's usually because you're chasing the money or because somebody talked a really, really good game and convinced you. It's like, oh, you got to be doing this. There's no, and I mean, think about the last time you read an email that showed up and you're like, oh, this is the latest, greatest thing. If you're not doing this, you're missing out. So somebody talks a good game, or you're chasing the money, or you're, anxious about whatever it is, going back to the squeaky wheel, whatever gets your attention. And, as I evaluated that over the last week, I projected myself forward. I said, well, what is this really going to look like if I do that in like 4 years? And it seemed like I was just going to still be working tons of hours doing the same kinds of things over and over, rather than having it kind of evolve into more freedom, or evolve into new and more interesting things, or being able to grow to a bigger scale. I mean, we want businesses that can grow beyond us and not just be wholly dependent on us and who we are and our brand, because there's an immediate ceiling on your business. So that meant kind of sidestepping and saying, okay, well, how could the current business ideas I'm working on turn into something more scalable and really provide what I would like my life to look like in 5 years, which is not doing the same exact things 40 hours a week still, but growing bigger things that spread farther and help more people and maybe are even more mainstream in what we teach. So that went back to lifestyle design. What do I want my life to look like? Not only now, not only in a year, but then in 4 or 5 years, and then even beyond that. And that's, everything from where you want to be living, which is part of when I project forward 5 years. That's definitely, I have a very specific idea of where I'd like to be living and what I'd like to be, what that apartment or house, or, if it's an apartment or condo in New York City, or a house here in Portland or whatever, I have specific ideas of what that would look like, how many hours a day you work, and what kinds of other activities besides your business are you involved in. And, that was driving some of these hard decisions, because the things that seemed the most important now didn't necessarily match up with what I wanted 5 years down the road.
For sure. And, one of the other things that's really useful of designing your lifestyle before you even start a business is so that you don't fall into the trap that I fell into. When I started, I actually ended up creating a really long daily job for myself. So when I started, I actually had an eBay business. It was still information products, but it meant that I had to actually create the products, which included CDs and DVDs and manuals. And then I also had to ship them and do all the customer service, which made it so that at first I ended up working sometimes 12-hour days. So I basically had an incredibly low paying job. So I went from a really decent job where I worked for someone else with good money and benefits to a brand new startup business with very little money and working just as much as, if not more, hours. And it's because I didn't know to design it ahead of time, what kind of lifestyle I wanted. So for many months, man, it was like sometimes 7 days a week too, trying to keep up with it. So it seemed like in some ways I was successful because I had a lot of orders coming in, but then I was working so much, I had no lifestyle. I had even a lower lifestyle than I had when I was just working a regular job. So it's one of those things where I wish I had have known this before, and I wouldn't have designed the business the way I had at the time. I could have skipped a lot of steps and just started with, I've got a very specific thing I want my business to do. I don't want it to need me constantly every day, all day, and that's some of the stuff that we've designed now. But it was because of this lifestyle design chart that we've created. And again, you can get that at internetbusinessmastery.com/2010. We've got an actual lifestyle design worksheet. It's got 7 or 8 questions in there that helps you design it ahead of time, again, so that you can get the most out of the decisions you make, and you can make those decisions from a really smart place that's part of your definite major purpose and fulfillment.
I'm gonna go ahead and give a little bit more concrete examples as well, because I realize that I'm probably sounding really vague here, and that's because I'm dancing the line between letting the cat out of the bag as to some of the things we have planned, and at the same time saying concrete about some of these decisions I've had to make for myself. But most people listening to this know that we have Internet Business Mastery, and that's something that we each work around 20 hours a week maintaining that and growing it, and it's done quite well over the last few years. But there's much bigger things that we would like to have happen with it, and some very large ideas that we've had come up even recently, and new opportunities. And At the same time, over the last several years, even before Internet Business Mastery started, I made that decision to become the thing that I designed for myself back then was I'm going to become the foremost expert on podcasting for business and how to use that to drive sales and attract new customers. And in many ways, I've been able to do that. I've had written the book and built up all kinds of relationships and got to have a site that attracts great traffic. Set up certain opportunities along those lines. And there's a number of things that I always felt like I still wanted to do with that brand because they're goals that I set back in like 2005 when I started down that road.